having the trust of the people, you cannot be able to use radio as a developmental tool, and you can never use radio to put the people together if they don't trust in you. Now, so we also think that radio is more than a means to guarantee the freedom of expression, it's the right to communicate. So not just expressing yourself, but it's also a means of communication. That's how we see radio. And then the theme for this year, World Radio, the radio and trust, we as community radio broadcasters, it strikes a chord in our heart because we think that as a community radio broadcasters, if you are unable to gain the trust of your people, you'll be able to do nothing, because they support us, we are within them, and the members of the community are even the broadcasters themselves who are trained to do the work. So if you don't have the trust of the people, the community radio station will just be like an empty shelf that you can use to do nothing. So this particular theme for this year, which is radio and trust, we believe so much that to broadcast as a community radio station, you need to win the trust of your people. And even as we did our work, we didn't really know that the people have in us until we had an attack, and we will definitely showcase that to you here. So radio and trust to us means that we have to keep up to our mission, which means providing voice to the voiceless and also serving the interests of the vulnerables in our community. There are a lot of people in our community who don't have any other means of communication, who don't have other means of maybe listening to news and other programs except through the local language. And that is what we think that radio and trust brings to us. Also, it's a charge to bring our communities together to plan, together to decide, and together to implement our developmental project. That's why I told you from the initial stages that radio to us is a tool of development. So we use radio to mobilize our people together, people and with all people. And when we say our people and all people, we are talking about women, we are talking about children, we are talking about the disabled, we are talking about people from other parts of the world to be part of a single community. That's what we believe in. Now, when you come to Radio Adan, as we all know, is a member of the Community Radio Broadcasting Network, and we started work somewhere in 1998, that's February 1998, and though members of the community radio station are from the community, they have received several trainings that brings them at par to any journalist anywhere in the world. We have benefited from programs from UNESCO, we benefited from programs from DW Academy, we benefited from programs from different international organizations, that UNICEF and the rest, that aims at improving journalists working around. And the staff, as I said, has been trained by well-qualified people. Professor Gajepo was one of the people who started training us, and also Professor Karkari. They all put much into the training of people at Radio Adan. So Radio Adan believes the radio is not just a means of dissemination of information and news, but it's a communal tool for development. I need to continue to stress that. And we continue to create strong bond between us at a radio community station and then our people. Radio Adan is the trusted voice now when you come to Adan for the preservation of the culture and language of the Dangwe people. We are called Radio Adan, but it doesn't mean it's for only the people of Adan, because we communicate in the Dangwe language. So our colleagues from Dodowa in the eastern region, and our colleagues from Ningo here down to Adan, and also even part of Volta region, wherever you are, if you speak the Dangwe dialect, then you are a member of the Radio Adan, or we serve you as a station. So that is about Radio Adan, and we have used it to improve on the speaking of the Dangwe language, because for a very long time when radio was in existence, GBC only give us 30 minutes in a week, but Radio Adan has come to serve the whole day. You can hear your language being spoken on air. And Radio Adan has also become the trusted voice for the protection of the pride, identity, and livelihood of the people of Adan. Some of these things came up after our attack, and we picked this from the speeches of our community members, that Radio Adan has become the means and the pride for the protection of the livelihood of the people and also the identity of the people. These are words that our community members gave to us when they came to share their solidarity with us when we were attacked. So Radio Adan is a leader, or is leading the charge for the transformation of communities through the power of radio, because we believe that radio achieves results. Yeah, so just to show you some of the things that happened, this is our main studio that was attacked. This immediately after the attack, before the police came, this is exactly what happened. They vandalized the place. This gentleman over here was the broadcaster in the studio when the attack happened. So you can see he has a swollen face. He was beaten mercilessly, and immediately after that, the police came and then they took our statement. And after that, till today, we've heard nothing. So this is just a picture of what happened in Adan. And Mr. George Sapo has been with that. He's called as his owners, also taking some information. It's not him alone. A lot of people called to solidarize with us and also to take statement in the bid to help to unravel the people who caused this mayhem. I would like to take a pause, and my sister Sewa will just continue with us with the presentation. The people left out with the message. Why did they attack Radio Adan?
Okay, so thank you so much, my brother and my other two senior men here. As he said, 8 to 10 armed men came to the station to attack and then to leave a warning. So when they came, they were asking of Noah. This is Noah in white, top and down. Why did they attack Radio Adan? So basically, as he said, there's this program called Manomunyu, which talks about the Songo Lagoon and its lease agreement and everything. In the process, some people feel the support of the investor or the industry started saying and speculating in town that Radio Adan is not doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Meanwhile, it was from their own documents that Radio Adan was broadcasting its programs. So they had to come and attack. Before they left, they gave a warning that they wouldn't want Radio Adan to broadcast anything concerning the salt again or the Songo Lagoon and its lease agreement, else when they come back, what they will do will be worse than what they came to do earlier. So on that 13th, a demonstration was planned, but later it was called off because the police said they do not have enough men to deploy. And that was the same day the attackers came to the radio station to attack the workers. So I think in the process of broadcast on the 26th of April, Electrochem, who is the investor or the industry, their lawyer wrote a letter to Radio Adan demanding the Manomunyu team, the people standing here, to retract everything they started from day one, saying that we are inciting the community against the investor and then everything they are doing. Meanwhile, they were not even given permits by the EPA, as seen here. Okay, so before Radio Adan's attack, previously there were some communities who are the salt-winning communities. You could see policemen who go and attack the communities, landguards who go and brutalize people. There were shootings all over. The names there, Benjamin Anim was arrested, and then he was handcuffed to the bed at the hospital in Joje for several days. On the 21st of May, Ebenezer Anim and others were also arrested. So at a point in time, Adan was becoming like a fearful place for the people to stay in, all because they just wanted to protect their livelihood. People couldn't stay in their rooms. Some of the local chiefs who were in support of what their community members were saying were also being beaten by these landguards and policemen. They were arrested and taken to the cells at Stema and other places. Even again, the policemen were arresting people there. Okay, so after the attack, we got people from the community who came to also give us their solidarity messages, and we had the Adan Muslim community coming. We had the people from Bonikope, the women. We had a traditional council. They also came. The Libiwano, who is the traditional priest of the Lagoon, also came. We had the Kudragbe, the Road Safety Committee, Methodist Church of Bigadan, the NADMO, Asafwa Chengwa, Presbyterian Church, and finally the Adan East District Assembly. Yes, so day in, day out, people keep coming to give their solidarity messages. So these are some of the photos from the people who came to visit. The first corner is the traditional council, and other people, you could see the women group seated in the chairs from Bonikope and other people in the picture. So the Muslim community is also there, and the Christian community also here. After everything, the traditional council has claimed that Radio Adan is inciting communities. Meanwhile, Radio Adan is a non-sectarian, non-partisan station. Radio Adan takes its role as professional broadcasters seriously. Radio Adan concentrates on audience overlooked by commercial and national media because the least voiced people in the community, Radio Adan makes sure to give voice to them, just as my brother said here. Finally, we as Radio Adan, we keep the community at the center and ask questions about those who don't. In all the things we do, we are guided by the community radio anthem. And I would want people or all of us who can help sing the community radio anthem to humbly be on our feet and just sing the community radio anthem together. Community radio. Community radio. A different kind of radio. We work with our people. Community radio. Community radio. A different kind of radio. We work with our people. Together we plan. Together we decide. Together we implement. We work with our people. Together we plan. Together we decide. Together we implement. We work with our people. Community radio.
Thank you.
But finally, before we leave here, I would want to ask your prayers and whatever you believe in, because the four of us standing here today, our lives are at stake and in danger in the community because some of these men who came to attack, earlier we received phone call threats from our private or personal phones saying, we don't want you to partake in the program, else we will beat you, else we will attack you. And Bragilius, Brother Noah, Amando, all of us have received such messages or phone calls from our phones, and I think the police reports have been made. We are still waiting to hear positive messages from the police. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this education and enlightenment. If you go back to the history of the origins of community radio, you will notice that, or you will learn that actually the whole concept of community radio emerged out of workers' struggles in Bolivia, tin miners. What we have heard here, or the testimony here, endorses also, once again, the essence of what a community radio is. As in my earlier remarks, I said that a community radio takes in questions of social justice. And this is exactly what our people in Adan were trying to do. The sin you committed is the sin of standing by the poor. And that sin, there is almost always a crucifixion by the powers that be in all societies. And that demands that we must stand very firm. I think from this meeting, we should try and start to mobilize to protect Adan Radio. Some other radio stations have had similar, not such levels of violence and intimidation, harassment, and so on. I mean, we don't have time to go through the testimony, the report, but you can see all kinds of contradictions. Contradictions within the traditional authorities themselves, contradictions between the traditional authorities and the general masses, the gender issue of women in the struggles to keep their livelihoods, and so on and so on and so forth. And then, of course, as I said also, press freedom is not always stifled, threatened, beaten up by the state, but powerful non-state actors are usually a major force of threat to press freedom. And so I think that we need to mobilize again. We've taken too many things of our rights, of our constitution, for granted. And that's why so many negative things are beginning to claw back the rights, obligations, and so on we have had in this democracy we have. Once again, democracy, rights are not things that we must joke with. We must keep fighting to maintain them, to expand them, to defend them, and to promote and grow them. So I think we need from here to find ways of mobilizing to protect Adan Radio. If we don't protect Adan Radio, Radford in Tumu, which is trying to struggle against the exploitation of, what do you call it, that wood, rosewood, stations in other parts of the country, which are also fighting around these issues of mining and what they are doing to the communities and their environment, and so on and so forth. So I think we must leave here today to revive a sense of struggle against this creeping encroachment on the rights of media, and particularly on the rights of community radio to exist and to protect the interests of our communities. At this stage, we also have one of our eminent media personalities here, Professor Amin Al-Hassan, the Director General of the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, to also Prof. Amin, before he came to GBC, had been a journalist in radio and so on, and was also a professor at the University of Development Studies. So let's pay attention to him. Before he comes, Mr. George Sapon wanted to make a brief remark. So, please.
Thank you. Yes, he said that. Thank you very much, Prof. I was only just publicly repeating our appeal. When I had, it's good that I have had the opportunity to see the faces of some of the colleagues that I've been speaking to. But I was just wondering, as a question of strategy, if it was a good idea that we showed your faces, since we still don't know the assailants who are looking for you. So just take note that because you've been on public show, if they are still looking for you, it deepens but more fundamentally, we've made a request to Radio Adan to submit a report to us. The report hasn't come. That's the only thing we are waiting for to close the investigations. And we would be
happy to be associated with this event. And I didn't hear Professor Kakari keep on repeating. I didn't hear that, but I'll say it now, that this event is carried live on GTV, GBC News, and Unique Radio. So basically, after this moving story from Radio Ada, in fact, Radio Ada itself is very interesting because of its pioneering role in this country. After this moving story, it's very difficult for me to stand here and speak about what the old man, 86-year-old GBC, is doing with radio. But nonetheless, it's something to be proud of that 86 years ago, when radio was put on in Ghana, GBC has continued to keep the torch burning. At some point in time, Professor Kakari was leading it, and now it's my turn. But I think that at GBC, I will want to share what we do at GBC with you by way of introduction. But by way of introduction, let me just recap some of the issues that came up here. I think key was Professor Audrey Gajepo's linking of trust to language. And for us at GBC, it is actually what broadcasting on radio is about. And there was also that George Sapon raised about activism. And I would like to remind us of a certain story when the Americans were thinking about what type of government they are going to develop into their country, and they were having these meetings. In those days, there was not much media. So citizens walked up to the hall and waited outside, and when the deliberators stepped out, they will ask, "What have you decided today?" And when they concluded and decided that what type of government they will have, when they were coming out, a very old lady asked, "So what have you decided for us?" His answer was, "A republic, if you can keep it." If you can keep it. What he was saying is that there is so much responsibility on the citizen to make the concept of a republic work. And if things like this happen at Ada, and it looks like we are not raising up to the task of making the republic work, the responsibility rests on you and me to ensure that we stand up. So a republic, if you can keep it, it is our responsibility to make our republic work. Now, my interest in radio started when I first came across a text by Karl Deutsch, when he talked about the possibility of multilingual nation state being a function of radio technology. The whole idea that somebody living in Paga, Boko, or Oseko Yokrom feels Ghanaian, not Ivorian, not Burkinabe, or any other, is the function of radio. And I think we should keep on repeating that. If you really want the country to integrate, make policies that will discourage the expansion of radio. When recently I made a tour of all the border towns of the country, what struck me was the fact that Ghanaian radio signals across our border towns are now weak or dead. Largely they were carried by GBC. And after carrying an electricity bill of 26 million Ghana cedis, we have decided to shut most of them down. So basically, when you go around the border towns, the radio signals around Chereponi, the signal strength is from Togo. Ghanaian radio stations are weak because GBC had a transmitter at Bimbila, had a transmitter at Yendi, which were powerful enough to cover the area. The one at Bimbila is shut down, and the one at Yendi is at a reduced capacity, simply because we are not able to pay our electricity bill, and there is no any sustainable mechanism to fund public service, and so these areas are down. Why am I bringing this up? Basically, I want to stress on the fact that it's a national responsibility for us to acknowledge and sustain radio as an instrument of national development. Yes, I've gone to places where they are telling me that why the private sector is doing a lot on media, and I said, no, you haven't traveled out of Accra, Kumasi, and Tamale. You are just sitting in these urban places, appreciating. When you really do an examination of our fringe communities, communities that border, you will appreciate the fact that we have a lot of work to do, and that is why at GBC, every day, despite all the challenges of sustaining public service radio, we broadcast in 25 Ghanaian languages every day on a network of 18 FM stations. We increased them last year by 3 to 18. Our target is 25. We think that is it. And this is one of the points about radio, as we have learnt it at GBC. Any community where there are conflicts, inter-ethnic conflicts in Ghana, go to that community and see the level of media penetration, especially radio. Not TV, just radio. Find out how many radio stations serve that area. And you will find out that there aren't many or there's nothing. So the last time people in Cherponi were fighting among themselves, and we were calling on them to stop, they never heard us. That was the truth. Because the radio signals didn't go there. The radio signals in Cherponi is Togolese. So we were kept on. And if you remember, it was after a bipartisan parliamentary committee visited the area that they had a message, stop fighting. All the media coverage we had about the fight, they didn't even know. The president appealed to them to stop fighting, they didn't hear it. Now, this is the reason why even we knew Boku was always a trouble spot. So last year we started transforming our relay station in Boku into an FM station. And there's an experiment we did at another place. I don't want to mention that community for the example I want to illustrate. A radio station in Boku, speaking the language of the two groups that don't get along, is critical towards bringing peace. We tried it in another community in Ghana, and when the radio started, the chiefs came to GBC and said, chiefs of a particular ethnic group, that they can't allow the aliens to also speak. They pointed to another ethnic group as aliens to speak on the radio, which is in their town. And I looked at the chiefs, their leaders' face, and said, you can choose to have their language spoken on the radio station, or the radio station will be shut down. Choose. They've come to accept the fact that the radio station will speak the language of those they describe as aliens in the same community. That type of compelling communities to live together through radio is very significant in bringing about peace in communities that several ethnic groups mix up. And that experiment led us to go to Boku to transform our relay station into an FM station. We were just about to launch it when the trouble started. We are waiting. When it is possible, we will go and get it on and make sure that the radio station speaks the language. They alternate to speak the language of groups that are not getting along. And this is why, when you are in a home and the radio station in the house also speaks the language of the group that you are, you get to build a better understanding of multi-ethnic community harmonious living together. You get to learn that. And that is how we are motivated at GBC to keep on expanding on our network so that very soon we will ensure that at least we have a lot of areas in Upper West to cover. You will have a whole district where the 3 major languages in the district, none is spoken on radio. We would have wished community radio systems will cover them, but we know the challenges of community radio, issues of sustainability and that. So we don't expect that to happen soon. But GBC should be capable of going to those areas and start an FM station that will make sure that the major languages are spoken in the area and they will live together. And these are the kind of lessons we at GBC, or the GBC experience of radio broadcasting, can contribute towards understanding a new regulatory architecture to promote and enhance trust in radio. We think that it's not enough to just say this is the policy on community radio, campus radio, commercial radio, public sector. We think we should go beyond that. Certain licenses should say that you can't take this license to this town and broadcast in only one language. We think we should think along those lines. The fear is this: the few sustainable radio stations that have sprung up in big towns tend to focus, of course, for economic reasons, on commercial radio stations on one language. We think that to also request that they should reflect the diversity of the environment where they are located. Otherwise, we will be growing this echo chamber media system that has already consumed the political space. You wake up, me, I'm NDC, so the radio station I'm watching is NDC, the TV station I'm NDC. It is not going to help our democracy. I'm MPP. The radio station I watch is MPP, the TV is MPP. It will not help our democracy. It is actually working directly against the purpose, the reasons, and the theoretical justifications that has made us to defend the existence of media in a democratic environment. It is critical that we appreciate that diversity must reflect in the media. And so I wish that the national regulatory system that we should think about is to see how we will ensure that policy guidelines reflect what Ghana is truly is. We are a country that speaks some 56 Ghanaian languages. Not 30 of them are on, only about 30 of them are spoken on radio. We think also that the issue of sustainability, both public service broadcasting and community radio, should be brought on the table. The last time an attempt was made on finding a mechanism to distribute TV license fees, it didn't work. But mark it, in every mature democracy that has gone through what we have gone through, even the United States, they have had a sustainable system to fund public service media and community media. Interestingly, the budget approval for United States 2022 was the largest ever in their history to support public media across the entire United States. Of all countries, they are putting more money on non-profit media. We in Ghana are running away from it at a time where we have challenges of holding the nation together. It's not in doubt that we haven't even secured our border communities through media. And if we don't, we stand the risk of having some troubles soon. I know when our UNESCO country rep, Ambassador Diallo, was here, he made mention the fact that the freedom we have is not given. It is not given. And if we are taking it for granted, we'll wake up one day and run and laugh from the wrong side of our mouths as a country. It is time to speak about these issues and work together. So for GBC, I think the position is very simple. We are not saying that a public service funding mechanism should be for GBC alone, and that GBC doesn't have exclusive right on public service media operations. No. We should define what constitutes public service. And if any media organization fits it, whatever funds we generate, we should use that to fund it. And we will be able to bring back the eroding trust that is in radio. And this ties into my next point, which has to do with the fact that community radio, private radios in commercially non-viable markets, the salaries of their workers is a threat to our democracy. When you give a mic to somebody that you pay 200 cedis a month to speak or to determine who will speak, you are endangering our democracy. It's time for us to develop a conversation around ensuring that there are certain minimum standards of the working conditions of somebody who qualifies to enjoy the privileges that our Constitution has provided to that space to allow them to speak to all of us. The right belongs to all of us. But when you get to sit at the mic, it is a privilege. Any one of us can take your place. So the time you are sitting there, how do we ensure that you take a very good care of this national resource, the ability to speak to all of us? And the danger rests with the working conditions of journalists in private, commercial, community radio, and public service radio stations. We need to see how the economic conditions can be sustained so that we can also demand some minimum guarantees from them. So I have been going around on multilingualism, the issue of interethnic relationship, and the issue of sustainable market, sustainable conditions for broadcasting, community radio, broadcasting, and all of that. And basically, we think that any conversation around it will have to be one that should lead towards regaining the trust that radio should have. I will conclude with some few comments on the discussions around the broadcasting bill. Let us face it, the truth about it is that before we finished discussing and writing that bill, it became outdated. We have to appreciate what has happened to radio and television in this country. And most of the discussion started at GBC. It's about radio, but let me touch on broadcasting. This conversation we are having now, GBC News is accessible across Africa. If you are in DRC Congo, you will get us. We've cut across jurisdictions that we don't have the right to be there. We are there through satellites. Somebody sits in another country and broadcast content that we will not allow in our country. What the bill doesn't answer, what do we do with the person? How do we deal with the person? I remember about almost a year ago, or not up to 1 year actually, about 8 months ago, I was up in the north, and after the Isha prayer, I was engaging the Imam in a conversation. He said, "It's time to go home and listen to Kevin Taylor." I said, "Oh, Imam, hold it. You mean you are using your phone?" He said, No. There's a TV channel. It's in and I watch it. And I got frightened. I went to my house. I mean, when I got back to Accra, I also scanned my TV and found out that there he was. How do you regulate that content? These issues we are saying we need to go back and reopen the conversation around the broadcasting bill. There's a lot we have to think. Broadcasting regulation has gone beyond national responsibilities. It's a continental affair. How does ECOWAS and the AU come into this business of how can we come together as a continental effort to ensure that we regulate broadcasting, both radio and television? And that is why the draft act we have, the bill that we have today, has a challenge, implementation challenge. We are not going to pass that and successfully regulate the sector because broadcasting has gone beyond the national boundaries, and our TV sets have. Many years ago, when television GBC engineers were discussing this scenario, they warned of this. If you go through our archives of GBC engineers pointed out that Ghana must take a definite position on either DTT or D2H. And they took a position on DTT, digital terrestrial television. And they said government must have a statement on DTH, direct to home. Unfortunately, the statistics today shows that how homes in Ashanti region and northern region are leading the country in terms of DTH access over DTT, predominantly DTT, which is regulatable by Ghanaian laws. But DTH sits outside the regulatory ambit of the state of Ghana. How do we have a conversation around this? And on that note, I want to thank you for listening to me and to always assure you that whilst community radio is defined by policy as distinct from public service radio, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation continues to identify and share in the meaning and spirits and the work of community broadcasting. And we think that we both are doing the same work, except that we have the privilege of drawing our salaries from the public purse. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Amin Al-Hassan. The professor he is, I'm sure we've learned a lot from his presentation. A number of critical issues. At the end of the day, I will say that the issues we are dealing with, complex as they are, all boil to the fact that when we talk about media issues, whether it's media development issues or issues of media rights and freedom, they are very political. They are at the center of politics in every state. But the issues raised here about the broadcasting law, regulation, absence of regulation, the seeming lawlessness in the airwaves, the lawlessness with our regulatory agencies, they tend to give the impression that the political parties that have run this country since the Fourth Republic are not too concerned about what we will say public goods. Those core public goods that weld us together and also allow us to actually savor the democracy that we are talking about. How come, since about 20-something years ago, that a group of us in a coalition started advocating for this broadcasting law? That's about, well, now I don't remember, but it's about 22 years or so now. How come every presidential candidate has spoken about it, but they do nothing about it? In recent years, John Mahama came up with this brilliant idea of a media development fund. What did we see about it? It was so badly managed that it doesn't exist anymore. We are dealing today with a president who prides himself with the credentials of press freedom, media rights, and so on and so forth. And I personally, in very personal conversations with this president before he came to power, espoused so many brilliant ideas. For instance, we had conversations about what to do with the state-owned media. And he, not only in private but in public also, has maintained his belief in public service media. So how come a president like this, even though he has on national days spoken about promoting this legislation, and yet we don't see anything, and look at where we are now. But they are politicians. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt that they have so many things to deal with. If you are a president of a country like this, I think the most critical thing that faces you every day is the poverty, the economy. Look at where we are now. So we may give them the benefit of the doubt that these things are more pressing, which means also that those of us who think that these democratic issues are pressing, we must press them to make them a priority. As we say in Twi, if you don't talk to the barber, you get a bad haircut. You see, so that is why we must mobilize. Radio Ada sums up all of these problems we are talking about: regulation, funding media, media rights, professionalism, this and that. So I think we don't have much time. We have up to 1 o'clock to deliberate. We want a few people to, Dr. Abraham has stepped out. When he comes back, we'll ask that he also makes an input. But I think right now, let's open it up for members here to also make their contributions briefly so that we can conclude the day. But I will propose that we should leave here with at least some resolution of reactivating a movement, one, to protect Radio Ada, to protect community radio, but to also reinvigorate the struggle to deal with all of these media problems, media rights issues, media regulatory issues, media development issues, media funding problems that we are talking about. I hope that now the owners of the commercial radio stations are beginning to think more deeply, because they are also on the attack. I do know some of them have been obstacles to the passing of the broadcasting law. Some of them have been lobbying, and I'm not surprised. But I hope today they are learning their lessons and will join us in the advocacy for a democratic broadcasting law in this country. Yes, there's a hand here. We have only one microphone. Come for it, please. Please mention your name, your radio station or media organization, wherever you come from.
I'm coming from the Western Region, Radio Hunter. We speak a Hunter on our airwaves 24/7. My first thing is about the attack of Radio Ada. And I'm here to say that it's not only Radio Ada. Most of us are going through same things, but just that the attack has not happened yet. Galamsey is prominent in where I come from, Hunter West District for that matter. It's so deep that there are no rivers for the people to drink. Meanwhile, there are no water, boreholes and pipe water for them. And it has become so deep. I had a lot of messages and calls threatening me, if you dare mention Galamsey on our radio, that will be the end of us. Personally, I am the head of Radio Hunter, and I am one of the founding members of Radio Hunter. They know me very well, and I'm also very vocal. But in fact, I tried it years ago. I succeeded in stopping them from polluting the Butu River. But this time around, last year, when it was at the peak of it, I was afraid. And my families warned me, if I try it, they would disown me, because my life was in danger. So it's not only Radio Ada. And I want my presenters not to mention Galamsey on the airwaves because we can't bear the consequence of it. These are the things that are lying under. You need to add them. Thank you. The next thing I want to say is that I'm very happy and excited to hear from Prof. What he said about the language and the fact that GBC is doing all that it can to extend radio and, for that matter, language coverage for GBC. But Prof, I have this short concern for you. I'm from the Western region. Twin City has been with that for several years, Twin City Radio. Actually, the Hunter people, not Fanti language, Hunter people. Except that Fantis have migrated and they are speaking Fanti over there. But Hunters are also there. So many years you've been marginalized. Not even a single minute for Hunter language on Twin City Radio. I think there was a contradiction here. I want to come again and tell me why. Because it has been a major concern for the people of Ahanta why their language is not heard on a Twin City radio, state-owned radio, which is housed in the capital of Ahanta tribe. That's for you, and I hope you tell me something there. The next thing I want to talk about is that we have community radio. I'm happy to hear from you once again. I know where you are coming from. The seat that you're sitting on. What you mentioned that community radio and parliament, the state radios or media need support from government. It makes a lot of sense to me. You are coming from the under the water, so you know what is there. We can never be sustained. That's a fact. Without government support. We are all here suffering. Tell me which community radio is not suffering in terms of your funds management or your finance. Tell me. We are all suffering. We can never be, if GBC will shut down a transmitter because of electricity bill, how can Radio Bongo, Radio Anta pay their bills? That is the fact. But then, as we all want to get somewhere, most of these so-called community radio stations are owned by politicians. Open facts. Today, if there's an initiative for government to support community radio, which one will be out? Is it the one that owned by the MD of the place? Thank you very much.
Some of us to establish quota. That was, what was the full name? Coalition of Transparency in the Airwaves. Because the NCA at the time was parceling out frequencies under the name of community radio to commercial people, and was also doing so partisanly. That is, if the MPP is in power, they give frequencies only to MPP people. If the NDC is in power, they do so for NDC. So we set this up. So once again, the idea of coming together again and to reinvigorate the struggle for transparency in the airwaves, and that encapsulates all the issues we are talking about, is also very paramount. Let's hear from one of Dr. Abraham is back. Yeah. Do you want to add your voice to some of these issues? I'll get to you after Dr. Graham, please.
Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me congratulate the organizers for this event, and also hearing from some of the people working in community, particularly the colleague who spoke about the experience in the Western region being very similar to Radio Ada. Organization Third World Network Africa works on a range of development issues, and we've collaborated with Radio Ada in the work that they've been doing on the South Mole Lagoon. I think Julius mentioned my organization's name. And I want to add my voice to all those who have spoken about the closing civic space, because the dangers that community radio and also brave journalists face, and also some of the kind of capricious arrests for people who speak out, is a threat to everybody who wants to say something different from what the powerful consider to be the only thing to be said. So organizations like mine, which seek to protect space for all to speak on things that concern them, we very much also are in the same space with you, because our work also requires honest, brave journalists for us to reach the constituencies who are affected by policy, whose lot we all want to improve. Working Radio Adan has been a privilege for us, because we've done a lot of work on mining issues over the years, and we also, so in sharing documents with them, public documents, that sharing raised a number of issues. At that time, to get a lease, copy of a lease from the Minerals Commission, you have to pay $500. There were 3 leases on the Songo Lagoon. So 3 leases, $1,500. The Right to Information Commission later on ordered the Minerals Commission to stop charging for the leases. But what it meant was that the communities along the Songo Lagoon, who were not consulted with standard practice in mining, even as there was a government framework from 1992 that committed the government to a community-based development of the salt, woke up and discovered that the salt, that the whole lagoon has been given to one company, one person in effect, with the secret collusion of a few chiefs. So when you hear the story of what is happening, then you have to understand its genesis. And the person who got the lagoon is a party financier, the same Mr. Macaulay, who is in the controversy around the Accra airport. So just like him, so this is so suddenly the communities woke up and discovered that their expectations that this lagoon will be developed for their benefit have been turned upside down. Effectively, going to the laguna, they'll be trespassing. In our work, in all mining situations, we try to support the communities to understand what is going on, to understand their rights under the laws of this country, and also their right to make demands on government about due process when it comes to this thing. So we made these leases available and all relevant documents available, public documents available to people in Adan who were interested and the radio station. And I think the effect of information in lifting ignorance and empowering people to ask questions and to assert their rights. What has happened with Radio Adan around the Songo Lagoon leases is an incredible story which really contains many lessons. Because suddenly documents in technical English available in Dangbe, the stories being told about this wonderful project was in sharp contrast with what was contained in the document. It changed the conversation completely. The attempt to muzzle Radio Adan is simply an attempt to stop people being aware of facts and public policies and public decisions that affect their life. And as an organization that has been part of this, I think this is a wonderful illustration of the value of honest media, courageous media, and also media that speaks to our people in local languages. And we have learned a lot from this collaboration. And really it's something we hope we can apply in our work in other parts of the country. So your radio station, which is interested in extractive issues in the Western region, we look forward to working with you and many other people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham. There was a lady here who wanted, yes. Your name, where we go.
Good morning. Sorry, good afternoon. Yes, my name is Frida Piguru, formerly of Radio Free Nandom, another community radio, and now back working for GCRN on localizing the Sustainable Development Goals. Prof, you spoke a lot about the need for us to make some resolutions here on World Radio Day, organized under the auspices of GCRN, and we will never stop being the Oliver Twist. Mr. George Sapong is here, and once again, I want to say that following Professor Amin's presentation on the importance, multilingualism, the importance of language variety in broadcasting, especially radio, to the most marginalized communities, and about the weak signals of Ghanaian frequencies around the borders. It's a threat to even our national security. Making the case, in short, for me to say that we need to reconsider our stand, especially with the national NCA, on regulating community radios to 25 kilometers, 5 kilometers of broadcasting, to say that once again, based even on that condition of language, that if you go to Nandom at the moment, the strongest signal or frequency you can get is Radio Argutar. It is a Burkina-based radio station. Why? Because the people of Nandom, Fielmore, Hamele, and even some parts of Jirapa and Lora speak the same language. And they are broadcasting all the way from Disin, which is several kilometers away from Ghana, right, coming from Burkina Faso. So I think we need to reconsider this. If we can take this conversation, we know the position of all of you, the passion for community radio to grow in our country, but the conversation shouldn't just end with you. Can you in turn advocate for us that we need to fill this gap, to be able to sustain democracy and our culture, in fact, to be able to make sure that we secure what we have today for those who are to come in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to see you, personally very happy to see you that you are still with community radio after so many years when I saw you in Nandom, in that little box called a radio station. I think the point about the absence of signals, Ghanaian signals on the borders, must be drummed home to the government very strongly. We are surrounded by territories which are now almost being taken over by terrorists. So if a government sits down and it takes only broadcasters to alert them to this very important question of security, then that government is reneging on its responsibilities according to the Constitution and according to ordinary norms of stateship. It's it's even in their own interest, the security question. So we must drum it up to the government, to the military, to the police, that it's not safe for us, that all around us you can't get signals of our own broadcasting. And as Professor Amin dramatically put it, even when the president pleaded for people to stop fighting, they couldn't hear him. So I think it's something we should emphasize on. At this point, I want to invite Mr. Brahma Sule Brahma from the Media Foundation for West Africa to also.
Thank you very much, Prof. And I want to add my voice to the congratulatory messages that have already been put out here for the organizers of this event, and also to UNESCO for the continuous support. I should also say that it's good to see you, Frida, because over the years I've heard your name several times through our work with your previous station, and I used to always joke with my colleagues in the office, "How is Frida from Radio Freed in London?" So it's good to see you. Now, when I used to work at the Chronicle some time ago, the publisher Nana Kofi Kumsin at one point had an issue with our business editor, and that the editor was not doing well enough because his stories were mostly PR stories. This company has done that, this company has done that. And we all seemed to disagree. And we thought, no, the guy was doing a good job. And eventually what Nana Kofi Kumsin said was that, look, there's no way that if he was doing a good job for the last 3 years, there has not been any threat of a court action against him. And for him, that alone was evidence that the business editor was not doing much. I am saying this to highlight the fact that the attack on Radio Adan was not because it was not doing a good job. It was because it was representing the interest of the majority of the people. And it is a trend that we are seeing. In September last year, we were in Guinea-Bissau. And throughout our engagement there, we were told that there was one particular radio station that everybody, including the president, the opposition, the governing party, everyone regarded as the most independent radio station in the capital, Bissau. And it's a small country. And the reasons were that, look, this is a station that allows for citizens' voices, citizens' contribution, and so on and so forth. I believe that those of you who follow the news around the region would have heard that about 2 weeks ago, this station was brutally attacked. And as I speak, for the last 2 weeks, they've been off air. And they were attacked because they were doing the kind of journalism that we all expect to see. I think in this country, when you are talking about professionalism, good standards, quality journalism, you cannot but perhaps add Radio Ada to maybe your top 3 or your top 4. Over the years, we have continued to work with Radio Ada, and as I speak, there is an ongoing work that the Media Foundation is doing with Radio Ada. And so such stations need to be supported, need to be protected. And I believe that, as Prof has mentioned, we need to mobilize ourselves and have some movement behind Radio Ada and other radio stations that we know very well are doing great job. Prof has always said that no government responds to silence. If you are silent, they are okay. But if you are doing the critical thing, that's when they will respond. I'm not by this saying that the government was responsible, but of course, the government has a responsibility to help create the enabling environment to allow for press freedom and critical journalism to thrive. So on the basis of starting that movement to support and defend Radio Ada and other critical media organizations, a number of like-minded organizations and individuals started a conversation on what we can do. And we set up what we call Radio Ada Solidarity Fund. We passed it on to persons and organizations that we know are very, very committed to matters like these. And I am happy to say that at this stage, we have had a number of organizations, the Media Foundation for West Africa, TWN, Third World Network, Africa. Dr. Graham, who is the head of that organization, is here. CDD Ghana, Africa Center for Energy Policy, Professor Odrigajepo, who is here, and Mr. Akoto Ampao, that I believe you all know. At this stage, I mobilized an amount of 50,000 cedis to support Radio Ada in the recovery process. And I want to add that The Solidarity Fund is still open. Of course, we were mindful not to open it up and say, oh, anybody at all can come and contribute, and then those that we suspect might even be behind the whole incident come to say, oh, here's our 100,000 cedis, and so on. So, yes, it's opened to like-minded individuals and organizations, and those who would want to support, you can always reach out to me, or to Dr. Graham, or to any persons in the other institutions that I've mentioned, or to Professor Gajepo, or to Lawyer Akoto Ampao. So, on that note, we would eventually make the presentation. Hopefully early next week, we would present the check to Radio Ana for 50,000 cedis. Subsequently, if there are any other contributions, we will make same available to the radio station. So congratulations for your great work. Remain firm. Know that we are solidly behind you, and we are in this together. So that's all that I can say for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ambassador Diallo wants to make a small contribution again, so you're very welcome.
Thank you, Professor Garikar. It's a very, very small contribution. Actually, it's just a closing word to all of you. Actually, just to share a few, when Hamid told me about this program, I think it's last week, and I said, well, GCRN, they wake up too late. They are submitting this program that late while we have planned the main event with GIG and so on. And then I went through the program. Oh, I see, oh, they are names with high caliber that GCRN have been able to mobilize. So it needs an attention. It needs to support this initiative. So just to share and to bridge with what George Sarpong was saying about this, the richness also of the ecosystem that we have here in Ghana. And we are very happy. We congratulate them, these high experts, people that are here and generous and very committed. Professor Kadikari, Professor Suleimana, and all others that are here. So we really need to thank you warmly. Please, a big round of applause for all of them that are here, that are observing, or also that are transmitting, for some of them, their experience, and that are reminding us, it has been said on a recurrent way, it's not granted forever. It's not granted forever. It's all in our hands, and you have the responsibility, all of us, to take, to play your part. Radio Ada is just an example, and with UNESCO we're very close to Radio Ada because it's also based on a biosphere reserve, which is a protected natural place, so under the UNESCO Man and Biosphere program. So, and we are very close, and so they are just one of the example players of these actors that are fighting to ensure that this democracy is here. So before closing, just to share with you a few information. We talked a lot about languages, culture. On Monday, we are celebrating the International Mother Language Day. This is the opportunity to celebrate and hence talk in our circles about our languages, and of course use all spaces, and particular community radio, to use the languages. Personally, I will be in Tamale with Bureau Ghana language, so we are celebrating there with the communities. The other information I wanted to share, Prof. Gajepo is here. She has finalized the review of the media development information landscape. It's an analysis giving the temperature of the media development landscape ecosystem here in Ghana. The studies was finalized last year, at the end of the year. So in the course of March, we will avail and present it. It's a document very important. for Ghanaian, for all actors, but of course to showcase also in the region, on the continent, to see where Ghana is standing on all these issues. So I will stop on this, and thank you very much, Professor Karikari. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, GCRN. Thank you, all communities radio, with the amazing work you're doing. And you mentioned the issue of borders, the signal, the languages that are being used. It's an issue that we are to tackle, and of course UNESCO will be here to support, to advocate in the spaces, and to support concrete initiatives coming from you, radio, association, national entities. So thank you very much. Merci to all.
Thank you very much for your support and encouragement. Thank you. And we are very proud to be associated with UNESCO. Thank you very much. We've come to the end of this program. And just by way of introduction, and also for us to appreciate where some of the founders of what we are doing came from. First of all, Radio Ada is what it is, and what we are praising them for because of the people who initiated the whole idea. I mean, and Professor Alex Kwame, Wilna Kwame, would certainly bring forth a radio station that would make them proud. I mean, when people have self-respect, whatever they do inures to that self-respect. And let me also remind all of you young people here that Professor Alex Kwame was one of the founders of television in this country. Actually, he was the first assistant director of TV at GBC in this country in the 1960s. So we are talking about people with ages and wealth of experience in what we are talking about. And I will say that let's give one applause to these eminent founders. We want to conclude now by making a proposal. Yes, Wilna wants to say something.
Thank you very much. Just for the benefit of UNESCO, because it's a long history. Okay. Professor Kwame was the very first UNESCO Regional Communication Advisor for Africa. So, good.
Alex, do you want to say something? You're okay, okay. We are concluding with a proposal. We mustn't just live here. We must keep the struggle on. So after some small consultation, we are proposing to set up a committee to start putting in place ideas, mechanisms, strategies to reinvigorate a movement for media freedom in this country, starting with dealing with issues concerning community radio, and then possibly also moving into other areas that are of importance to the issues that we have discussed here. And Sule, is Sule still here? Okay. Sule, we want to propose that we start with the organizations and names of persons that you mentioned here as having contributed to the fund. And namely, we want to approach them to see if they will be interested in becoming part of the organization. You see, some of us have been in this business for a long time. We are retired from our formal income-earning employments. We are continuing with the advocacy work because you ought to fight for freedom until your maker calls you. As for fighting for freedom, there's no pension, there's no retirement. Occasionally, some of us may not be as vigorous and as strong physically, but we will push and give. So in this endeavor, there was a gentleman here from a Western regional radio station. Yes, please take note. We want you to be a part of it. We want the others in the other community radio stations to be a part of it. And we want you young people, young women, to be a part of it because the struggle must continue. So, I don't know whose address should we use as initial coordinating. Sule, can we use your office? I know you are overwhelmed. Yes. Yeah, okay. So let Sule take this and dictate an email address. And please, everybody should take it. And then the email addresses that were compiled here, Lydia, I think we will need it so that we can send messages to people about this movement we want to restart. We are not starting it now. It's been there, but it's been dormant. And we want to reinvigorate it. We have to keep struggling. Every democracy, look at the United States of America and the period of Trump. The great America, their democracy, to the extent that even today, he's disputing an election that was honest. So no democracy can stand still. In fact, if you stand still, you die. So, but it is us, as has been said here, it is us, the citizens, who must make our democracy work. And we can't go to sleep. If we go to sleep, we are all dead. So we must, in our little corner of media, at least try and do something about it. And I'm sure TWN is there, CDD, they are there. They have shown already their interest in media rights and media freedom. So Sule will dictate to you, and please note it, an email address that you must send information about this business of movement for media rights, press freedom, freedom of expression generally in this our democracy. We cannot stay here in Ghana and feel good that the world is saying Ghana's democracy, Ghana's democracy. We are the ones here and we know where the shoe fits, squeezes. So we should not take anything for granted. In our little corner, this is what we want to start. And hopefully we can make some mileage. So Sule, I think you should just dictate the email address for people to note it down. And we will start a small committee here to begin to work out the modalities, and we'll send it to all of you according to the addresses that we have there. Thank you very much.
Well, I think that to start with, if anyone has any ideas about this process, you can always send an email to info@mfwa.org. So that's info, I-N-F-O, at M for man, F for food, W-A for water, W for water, A for apple, .org. info@mfwa.org. Eventually, we would create a dedicated email address for this, but perhaps what we would also do is to maybe reach out to GCRN for the participants list so that the small group that will be created, and out of whatever brainstorming that happens, we can send to everyone maybe the terms, the conditions, and other steps that we plan to take. And those of you who may have time to be able to commit can then reach out to us with your ideas and thoughts, and we take it forward. Thank you so much.
At this moment, the program is, we are done with the program for this morning, and I want to thank GCRN for inviting me to be a part of it. But on the program, as Ghanaians do, there's a formal vote of thanks by Ms. Gifty Ajua Nyomi. Gifty, where are you? Okay, come and give us the vote of thanks. People are tired, hungry, and wanting some break. So please, don't make it another speech.
Thank you very much, Prof. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you agree with me that we all need to put our hands together for today's function. He's done a great job, a wonderful, wonderful job this morning and this afternoon. Prof, we thank you so much. Like you said, I know people are ready to go out for a break and all that, so I'll do it snappy. I think I have two ways of doing it. A very short one and a long one. You saw me holding a book. But because we are itching to go out for this break, I'll do a short one and maybe conclude with a long one. Don't be worried at all. I'll do it snappy. Distinguished participants at the high table, Papa and Mami Radio, friends from other radio stations, colleague members of JCRN, ladies and gentlemen, I trust you will agree with me that the celebration of World Radio Day this year has been made more meaningful, and this well-organized program has impacted positively on us as members of JCRN. And for that matter, our audience are going to trust us the more as we endeavor to implement some of the ideas, information we've received from our distinguished resource persons. And we thank God, we thank Allah for making all these possible. Prof, once again, thank you. And especially for your emphasis that we should learn how to pronounce names correctly. We're most grateful. To our distinguished resource persons, Prof. Gajapo, Mr. Diallo, I hope I got the name correct, Mr. Sapong, Prof. Amin Al-Hassan, we are most grateful for the wealth of knowledge you've shared with us. Trust us, all that you've shared with us this morning will not be in vain. We are better equipped in our deliveries and strengthened in our various to deliver when we go back to our various stations, just to ensure that we still have the trust of the people. Our friends from Uganda and Zambia, we are grateful that you could join us for this celebration. I'm at a loss when it comes to the organizers, Auntie Lydia, Mami Radio, together with the rest of the team members, those who work behind the scenes in ensuring that they've put this wonderful package together for us. We say thank you, and Ayuko. Thanks also to the Crossing Borders, Denmark, for enabling the participation of other JCR community radio stations in the symposium. But with all the organizations, what would we have done without UNESCO? To UNESCO, we say thank you for your support. Thank you so much for being with us all these years. And finally, to all JCRN members. And even before I come to the JCR members, I would want to say a big thank you for Papa Radio for being with us today in this celebration. To all JCR members, we wouldn't have had any celebration without you. Some of you started your journeys as far back as 2-3 days ago, and here we are, together, having this wonderful package. We need to pat ourselves at the back. Ayuko, and thank you all, those who have to return to their various stations when you're going. We wish you God's blessings. We wish you all the best. And let's ensure that this is not just one of the fora that we came and we listened and that is it. But we are going to be strengthened, or we are strengthened, and now we are even more confident to deliver for the benefit of our audience. Thank you very much, and God bless us all.